Hi there, I'm Clifford Bates, and welcome once again to Reading Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics. We're continuing our examination of Book 7 of the Ethics, focusing today on Chapter 7, so 7 of 7, right? Again, we're dealing with the specifics of the question of acrosia or self-restraint, or lack of self-restraint, acrosia. Um, and therefore, we're going to be looking at the question of this and regarding this. The other things, the previous chapter 6, we looked at the question of spiritedness. Now we're looking at today pleasures and pain, and as for pleasures, pains, and desires. Right. So let's go right to the chapter. But as for the pleasures, pains, and desires, and aversions, so pleasures, pains, desires, and aversions that arise through touch and taste, which both licentious and moderation were earlier defined as being concerned with. It is possible for someone to be such as to be defeated by those that the majority of people, most people, now 33 here is the many, the hoi polloi, right? The many, those that the many, the hoi polloi, are stronger than. And it is possible to be such as to overpower those by which the hoi polloi are defeated. Okay, so therefore, in other words, um, it is possible to be such as to overpower those, control those by which the majority are defeated. In other words, there is this problem. There is this licentiousness. This, in other words, pleasures, pains, desires, and aversions through touch and taste. Right, and both of these are this. But now the question of there's ones whose they have, in other words, here's the many. The many is the mean. The many, the hoi polloi, are the mean position, and those who, through defect, simply that they will what? They can't withstand any. In other words, they cannot tolerate the play. They can't. In other words, they have the excess of it. They can't. They just succumb to it. And then those who are repelled by it, right? They seek it and avoid it, right? They desire it and reverse it. The majority, in that sense, right? That they are defeated by it. In other words, they're those who are stronger than. In other words, they're defeated by the majority that are stronger than. Those things are more powerful than, and it's possible for such as to overpower. In other words, they are able to restrain it more so than the many are to restrain it. So those who are able to restrain it more, and those who are able to not restrain it more, or to cave into it more, right? To succumb to it versus to overpower it, right? In these cases, one person lacks self-restraint concerning pleasures, another is self-restrained. One person is soft when it comes to pains, the other steadfast. So this is the two types. The one who does more than that. In other words, here's what an average person, the one who's able to overcome what the average person succumbs to, or to not succumb to what the average person succumbs to, right, is steadfast. This is steadfast. The other one who cannot do what the average person does do. So it's relative. Softness, and the question of softness or steadfastness seems to be relative to what the hoi polloi, the many, are, right? But the characteristic belonging to most people is, in this case, these. Even if people incline towards in other words, even if people incline more towards the worst characteristic, that's right. Even if in other words, even if the majority, hoi polloi, the many, are inclined, most people incline to the worst characteristic. The characteristic belonging to these people is between these, right? The many, in that sense. Even if that they are the people are inclined more towards the worst characteristic. So this is optimality in that sense. That is, in other words, the one who lacks self-constraint. Again, the point of reference seems to be what most people do, right? In terms of these pleasures. Now, some pleasures are necessary, others not. The former are necessary only up to a certain point. So, in other words, there's some pleasures are necessary and others are not necessary. And then those are necessary. They're only the former. These necessary ones are only up to a certain point. Those that are excessive are not necessary, and neither are the deficient one. That's in other words, you don't do as enough. In other words, you either in excess or deficiency, then that is no longer necessary. Necessary is doing what is the amount. In other words, the necessary pleasures is up to a certain amount. So less than that is a deficiency, and more than that is an excess, right? Um, so up to a certain point, right? And what concerns desires and pain is similar. So again, what does desires and pain occurs similar? Therefore, what if there's what is necessary? Necessary pains. Okay, that's just up to a certain point. You feel more pain than that, or less pain than that. That's again excess, and that's pleasure and pain. Again, to that degree, in that sense. Given all this, the person who pursues the excessive pleasure in an excessive way or through choice. So, in other words, there's two ways they can do it. They can just excessive pleasure in excessive way by because they can't control it, or they do so willingly, doing so for the sake of pleasures themselves, and for nothing else that results from them is licentiousness. Licentious. So licentious is tied to this. That the one who is what they do it either through choice for the sake of the pleasures and for nothing else that results from them. I'm doing it for the pleasures. I'm not doing this to get something else, but only for the pleasures. That's licentiousness, one thing. But the other way is that I do it both excessive pleasures and in an excessive way. In other words, I pursue excessive pleasures in an excessive way because I can't control myself, or that I choose to do it on its own. This is licentious. For this person necessarily feels no regret, and so is incurable. Since the person without regret is incurable, in other words, they feel no regret. If I choose it like this way, and even though the excessive, in other words, if I get too much pleasure and I do this and I enjoy it too much, I'm not going to regret it, or I choose it for its own sake. Either there's two things: either I succumb to it with him because I just the pleasure is too strong and I want and I get it to excessive pleasure, excessive desire, and excessive thing. In other words, I just succumb to it. It just pleasures. I see the pleasure. I don't necessarily intend to choose it. It just happens, right? Both of these are uncurable in that sense because they're not. They don't feel regret. But he who falls short is the is the opposite. In other words, he who falls short is the opposite of this. He who is in the middle, moderate. In other words, the one who is falls short. I don't. In other words, the one who is okay. It's interesting. He says that the person who feels no regret is incurable. And therefore I do this for two reasons: either because it's excessive and excessive. So it's not doing it an excessive thing. I it's not excessive. I seek moderate pleasure or some pleasure, and I seek it not excessively, or I seek pleasure, but I don't excessively. Okay, this is more more moderate in that sense, right? It was in the middle, moderate, sophisunos, right? Sophasune in that sense. Is it yeah, sophasuno? Soundness of mind. Those who fall short is the opposite. He who is in the middle, moderate. So the fall short is the opposite of licentiousness. Of this, he doesn't do more of it. He doesn't seek it more. He falls short of it. He's the opposite of it. And he who's in the middle, that's the right amount, right? is this. So therefore, again, this is like the virtue. What is the I falling short of it means I okay, I'm not licentious, but but in the middle, but he who falls short is the opposite. Remember, what is opposite of licentiousness? It's not moderation is the middle point. Remember, opposite of licentious is senselessness. Is kind of not doing like this, right? The person who falls short of what he desires in that sense, it doesn't do that. That's weird. He who falls short is opposite, and he who is in the middle, moderate, right? That's again, it's like the virtue, excess and the middle position versus the excess and extreme, right? And similar in the case of someone who avoids the bodily pains because not because he defeated by them, but through choice. In other words, this is like, okay, I I overcome pain. In other words, I'm not defeated by them. In other words, if I go to the question of this, in other words, avoid bodily pains, not because I am defeated by them, but through choice. In other words, I avoid bodily pains because I can't control it. I'm so afraid of them. This is that extreme, right? But then the other one is that I don't. I'm insensible towards it. Okay, that's to the excess. The opposite of that's excessive, right? This person is, but I choose not to accompany by pain. In other words, I make a choice. This is a choice that I'm not going to succumb to pain, to avoid the pain, avoid bodily pain. I will engage it. I don't choose pain for its own sake. I'm usually choosing it. I choose to engage it because there's something beneficial, something else beneficial to this. Now, among those who do not choose, one type is led by pleasure, another by avoiding the pain arising from desire. So one is led by pleasure, the other one is avoiding the pain arising from desire. And so they differ from each other. So there's two types who do not choose. One is that they don't choose the thing, that is the question here, but is led by pleasure. He does it because he's led by pleasure. Another one is avoiding the pain. They don't choose it because they want to avoid the pain that the desire causes. It would seem to everyone to be worse if someone should do something shameful, though he felt no desire for it, or only a mild one, than if he should act so because of a strong desire. Just as it would seem to be worse if someone should strike another without being angry at him than if he did so in anger. In other words, he had no reason to do it. In other words, he had without having a cause of being angry with him, an intentional anger. In other words, he's just something that I should be angry with you about. I just did it out of anger. In other words, did it. Then he did so in anger, for no reason. I think for no reason in that sense, right? It would be worse for someone to. Okay, this is interesting. It's worse to someone that someone who did it out of an excessive thing. In other words, I did so. I did some. I acted out of a strong desire. In other words, is less shameful than someone who did something shameful. Is it? It would be. It would seem to everyone to be worse if someone should do something shameful, if he had no strong desire for it, or only a mild desire for it. But then if he had a strong desire, in other words, if he had a impulse, a very powerful impulse leading to this is less shameful. This is less worse than the one who didn't have a strong impulse. In other words, had either no desire for it, only a mild desire for it, and then did the shameful thing. Okay, that means that they weren't being compelled, but they still do that. Now they did it because they couldn't stand it. they couldn't resist any of the pain of it, or that the desire was just, even that small desire, not doing it was so unacceptable for them that they do it in that sense. But they're not really compelled in the same way. Okay, there is a sense of choice in that case, in that sense, and that they feel, and it's like, just as it would seem worse if someone should strike another, in other words, cause harm to another, strike another, without being angry at them. I'm not angry with you. I just hit you. That's choice. Choice. But if I'm angry with you and I strike you, I understand that. In other words, there's a difference between, in other words, I strike you without reason versus I strike you with a kind of reason, understanding of. Now, this other striking you could be for another reason, but the striking you without any real, I'm not angry with you. I strike you. That is worse than doing it out of anger in that sense. For what would such a person do were he in the grip of passions? In other words, that person who is in this situation, who is in the grip of passion, the one who does something, who does it he does something shameful without strong passion, it would be more shameful. He will do even the more shameful thing. And this guy who would strike another without reason of anger, what do you do if he was angry? Okay, it would be worse. Hence, the licentious person is worse than the one who has acrasia and that lacks self-restraint. In other words, licentious person, the one who does this, who, in a sense, licentious. The licentious person who simply just desires it. This is worse than the one who there was this choice involved. That he would, in other words, this in this sense, the choice involved makes it worse. The choice involved, the intent, the mind of doing it, rather than the compulsion of doing it. That is worse. Um, so, of the characteristic mentions, the one is rather a form of softness, whereas the other person is licentious. So therefore, there's two types of things, right? That therefore, one is that their body is they can't resist it, right? There is the one who are just impelled that they can't resist it. They act because they can't resist it. This is kind of like a self-restraint. This is a softness. Well, no. The softness is, what is the softness? One is rather a form of softness, as the other one is the person's licentiousness. So, what is the licentious one? Licentious one is what? It's the one who simply um, chooses, but the other one is just that he can't resist it. I can't resist it. I don't have the character to resist the input. In terms of this, the one who chooses it, and the choice is twofold. Is the two choices that I just simply choose it, or that I have a mild imposition, but I choose it anyway. I go for it anyway. I could resist it, but I choose not to resist it. The pain of not resisting is not strong. It's not a strong impulse. I could resist it, but I just opt not to. Okay, so there is still some choice here. Whereas the overwhelming, I'm forced to do it because this compulsion to do it is a compulsion that I really can't resist. That there's no choice involved in that sense. You're doing against your choice. Whereas the person who just is a mildly thing, but I have no resistance. I have no resistance to do it. And that therefore this is kind of blameworthy to some degree. But isn't that softness also? The softness there? That the one who just can't control it, is this softness? It is softness in that degree. But isn't the one who just can't, isn't softness more the condition of I just sense that I should not do it, but I just can't bother to fight it? But that's more blameworthy than that one, right? So there is this aspect of this. The other one is what? Licentious one is the one I choose it. But that is similarly that. Essentially, he says that both the one who just does this is a thing. So the softness is the inability to resist the strong impulses. or resist any impulse. He who lacks self-restraint lies opposite the self-restrained person, right? The steadfast one opposite the soft. For being steadfast consists holding out against something, whereas self-restraint consists in overpowering it. So steadfast is holding out, I resist. So self-restraint is what? A lack of self-restraint is the opposites, but then and softness, steadfastness, and softness are opposites, right? So self-restraint, steadfastness, but he notices he flips it: lack, then self-restraint, right? So acrasia and then incrasia. Here, soft it goes steadfastness, opposite of soft. So it's the flips. They flip the title around. For being steadfast now defines it, consoles it, holding out, resisting. Steadfast means resisting. Being soft means you don't resist. Whereas self-restraint means I overpower it. Self-restraint consists in overpowering it, and holding out is different from overpowering. In other words, so therefore, this is a difference between self-restraint and steadfastness. Steadfastness is resisting it, holding out. Self-restraint is overpowering, defeating it, overpowering it. Just as not being defeated is different from winning. Okay, in other words, I don't. In other words, holding out means I don't. I'm not. I just don't lose. Right. I hold out. I resist. Not being defeated. I'm not defeated. Whereas the the self-restraint overpowers. He wins. He doesn't succumb. Hence, self-restraint is more choice-worthy than steadfastness. But the person who falls short in relation to what the majorities, the hoi polloi, right? Again, this is the many, right? The hoi polloi strain against and are capable of. But he who falls short, he is soft and delicate. Okay, this is where softness and delicate come. In other words, the one who falls short to what the many can do. This is soft and delicate. For such delicacy is in fact a sort of softness. Delicacy is a softness. For example, he who lets his cloak drag, so that he does not suffer pain of lifting it up, and who, though he imitates someone sickly, does not suppose that he himself is wretched. Similarly, though he is wretched, though he imitates someone sickly, he does not. In other words, he imitates someone like this. He doesn't suppose himself wretched, similar though he is to the wretched, the sick, in that sense, right? I imitate someone who's like this, but I don't see myself as sickly in that sense, wretched. Although similar though he is to the wretched. So in other words, he can't bother. He doesn't bother to resist. He's just out of some softness. In other words, some softness in that sense. So the softness is that, again, what is below what the majority are capable of restraining. This is soft and delicacy. Such delicacy is, in fact, is an excessive softness, right? That he can't even bother to, he lets his coat drag because he can't bother to lift his coat up. Because the suffer, in other words, it's too much effort. Likewise, who imitates someone sickly, simply because he doesn't think himself sick, but and even though he is as wretched as the sick person. In that sense. The case is similar also as regards to self-restraint and lack of self-restraint. So, again, what's interesting here is this is what he did here is the steadfast and the relationship between the steadfast and the soft. The soft is like this, right? That now he says in the case the case is similar to the self-restraint and lack of self-restraint. For if someone is defeated by stronger and excessive pleasures or pains, that is not to be wondered at. So therefore, regarding self-restraint, that you're defeated by stronger and excessive pleasures and pain. That's nothing to be wondered at. Rather, he is apt to receive sympathy if he at least strains against them, just as Thedodius Philocletes did when struck by the viper, or Clearemon in the Aesop of uh, Carcinus, and just like those who, though they attempt to restrain their laughter, burst out laughing at all at once, such as happened to Xenophanes. Now, this is 39. Theo. Now, there's no deals with all the um, cases here, right? He goes, Theodenes, author of the Orator, once born in Lysias, but probably lived mostly in Athens, where he's said to have studied with Plato and Aristotle, among others. His Philocrates did not survive. Carnus, son of the tragedian Carcinus, is said to have authored a 60 play. Aristotle mentions him in the Poetics and Rhetoric. According to the scholar quoted by Burnet, when Chiron learned of his daughter's marriage, he asked her whom she had married, saying that if you should tell me this, I whom she'd married. I heard that someone married, and they're saying, you should tell me this. I would not be altogether pained. Yet he found the pain living too greatly once he heard her answer and chose to die. Right? Because he said, "Oh God, no! You married her person. I want to die. No, let me die." Okay. Oh no, I won't be pained, and then I dies. Right? And Xenophanes here mentioned may have been a musician in the court of Alexander. Right? This is, in other words, this example that he gives here, that they all burst out laughing at once. It's like, oh God, this is so ridiculous. Like, this is that you know, they there is this impulse that they couldn't control it, that their action resulted from something that they thought they could control, but they couldn't. Okay. But it is to be wondered at if somebody is defeated by and unable to strain against those pleasures and pains that the hoi polloi, the many, majority, are able to hold out against. When this is not due to the nature of one's stock, or in other words, of one's genos, class, race, kind, or race, right? Ethnic stock, genos, so ethnicity, race, these kind of things. In other words, that hold out, they're not able to do it now when it's not due to the nature of one's race or to illness, like the softness of the Scythian king due to their stock, as the female is distinguished from the male. Okay, in other words, you're able the male and female difference, the different stocks and different, you know, sex, the different sex, male, female, different ethnoi, and different races. Okay, ethnoi and races are similar in that sense, but there's more differentiation. There can be greater similarity of ethnoi to each other, and races are more differentiated, right? So therefore, of the stock, it can be that there's a stock or a difference of this, the stock of her ethnoi in that sense, right? But then also that therefore the king of this or female is distinguished from male, right? That in other words, the idea is that the average. Okay, we understand that the women, in some things, men do better than women, and women do better than men, right? That the mean point of what that is that. So therefore, there is the differentiation here of the mean or the modal point of what is to be done, right? Of the many versus that and those who fall short of it in that sense, right? They cannot resist of what even they resist. So therefore, of this situation of the softness of the Scythian king due to their nature, and the woman will understand that the woman is not going to, at the courage of this, that okay, resisting certain pleasures, women should resist them, men should be more likely to resist them than women, or vice versa. It could be those other ways. Here, this is that case, right? That as a female distinguished from the male in that sense. And someone fond of amusement is held to be licentious, what's fond of amusement, but is actually in other words held to be licentious. Someone who is fond of amusement, you're going to say that there's like things that amuse them, the pleasures that amuse them. This is not really licentiousness. They're held to be licentious, but it's actually soft. Play is for relaxation. If in fact it is recreation or rest, and the person fond of amusement is among those who are excessive when it comes to this. So therefore, the problem with people who are amused, in other words, play is acceptable. Play is acceptable when it's time of rest, right? Relaxation and rest. But those who are those who are of an excess, who are fond of amusements excessively, they're just soft. One part of the lack of self-restraint is impetuosity. So one part of lack of self-restraint is impetuosity. They can't control. Another, weakness. So one is I can't control myself, impetuousness. And the other one is weakness. Some people deliberate, but when they're not able by their deliberation on account of the relevant passions, in other words, some people deliberate, but then do not abide by their deliberations on account of the passions, while others, because they do not deliberate, are led by the passion. So therefore, impetuous person is this one who does not deliberate. The impetuous one, right, is one who just acts on the passion. But the other one deliberates, but then the passion overwhelms them. That is the soft weakness, right? That is weakness. Just as those who anticipate being tickled are unaffected, those who anticipate being tickled are unaffected by being tickled. So too, someone who perceives and sees in advance what is coming, and so rouse themselves in their calculation in advance, are not defeated by the relevant passion, whereas it is pleasant or painful. In other words, here is this other case, right? This is the even though it might be pleasant or painful, that they're what they are, what they are for those. Let's do this. Just as those anticipate by being those who anticipate being tickled are unaffected by being tickled, so too those who perceive and see it in advance what is coming. They see in advance. In other words, they perceive tickledness. They're unaffected by being tickled. Who anticipate being tickled. In other words, so too some who perceive and see in advance of what is coming. So rouse themselves in their calculation in advance are not defeated by their relative passion. So this is the logic of it, right? Those who see the tickling going to happen don't get tickled. Don't succumb to the effect of being tickled, right? Here, thus as so too people who perceive and see in advance what is coming, so rouse themselves in their calculation that they are not defeated by this, and whether it is pleasant or painful, right? And it is especially the keen. It is and it is especially the keen and the melancholic who lack self-restraint. The keen are what? Now this is excitable. Those with excessive bile and given agitation. This is the keen. I like. I guess enjoy. I want to enjoy it. Excitable, but then the melancholic. The melancholic is one. 37 here is or they said excitable, those who with an excessive black bile, so given to agitation or unease. Like this is what especially the keen, those who accept, I want it. The keen is something I want it, right? And the melancholic is get agitated, uh, uh, whose lack of self-restraint is of the impetuous sort. So therefore, the keen, oh my, I want to, overexcited to it. Oh, this is like I just bad. I just have a reaction. I always get a bad reaction. Melancholic, melancholic. It's a bile that just causes a reaction. In other words, that what he says that agitation or unease, right? Those whose lack of self-restraint is of the impetuous sort, that these two are impetuous. For neither the former on account of their swiftness, nor the latter on account of the intensity of their passions, stick with reason. So the latter on the intensity, this melchonic, the intensity of their passions. This is why I think it's probably not, it's excitable. I think that is excitable. The keen, I want it, the keen is excitable, the overreactive. In that sense, the melchonic, I don't know why, I have to see what the Greek word is. Um, 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 Self-restraint is those who lack the impious sort, right? Impetuous sort. Who lack self-restraint is that impetuous sort, right? For the former on account of their swiftness, the keen, right? And the latter on account of the intensity of their passions. They're apt to being, their, in other words, their intensity, their passions, they are being apt to follow imagination instead. In other words, this because of their mind and the intensity of the kind of the intensity of their passions, the intensity of their passions. In other words, on account of the intensity of their passion, stick with reason. They end up following their imagination instead. In other words, the first in keen is impetuousness. The latter, on account of the intensity of their passions, stick with reason. Right? They being apt to follow their imagination. So that would, however, they instead of they would stick to reason, but their imagination leads them away. They say they follow their imagination instead of reason. On account of their imagination, stick with reason. They being apt to follow their imagination instead. So the melancholic is kind of in other words, intensity of the passion leads them not to act. So that's a weird thing, into agitation or unease, right? So therefore, their unease, they would lead them to what? Their imagination themselves. That's a weird ending in that sense. I would like to see what. I would like to see what. For on the most part, it is quick tempered, and the bilious sort of people, bilious sort of people that have lack of self control and in its impulsive variety. Hastiness on the one case and intensity on the other prevents them from waiting for reason because their disposition is to follow the perpetual appearance in that sense, the imagination in that sense. What does Reeve say? Mm. And it is most of all the quick spirited and the passionate people. Passionate people, melancholic, who are lacking in self control. That is impetuous lack of self control. For it's because of the hastiness in the one case and because of the intensity in the other that they do not wait for reason. because they are of the sort of people who follow appearances. Well, I think this is a more problematic. Reeves is less than good. What does Hackett? What does my other Hackett guy, Irving? So I haven't looked at Irving at all, but let's look at this. Chapter 7. Hold on. It's a long translation. One type of inconstancy is impetuosity, the other is weakness. For the weak person deliberates, but when his feeling makes him abandon what he reached by deliberation, but the impetuous person is led on by his feelings because he's not deliberated. For some people are like those who are not get tickled themselves if they tickle themselves else first. And if they notice something in advance and rouse themselves in their rational calculations, they are not overcome by feeling, no matter whether something is pleasant or painful. Again, I'm going beyond this. Now, this is a passage right here, a sentence. Quick-tempered and volatile persons are more prone to be impetuous in incontinence, be perpetuous incontinence. Okay, this incontinence. For you can see following the Latin, just kind of Latin translation of this. For in quick-tempered people, the appetite is so fast, and in the volatile people, so intense, so fast intensity, right, that they do not wait for reason, because they tend to follow what they see, the appearance of things, their imagination. So this is how we end the chapter, and therefore the question of how this works, the perpetuousness of this, and tying it to the tastes and relevant tastes, and the pleasures natural versus unnatural, and responding to it. This is how he ends it. So let's stop here. If you have any comments or questions, please put them below. If you really want have anything, ask me to ask something more specific or a question you want to ask. If I see it, I will respond to it. Okay. Now, if you've liked it, hit the like button. It helps the channel. It helps the channel. It helps the algorithm build the algorithm. If you like this, if you do also like it, share it far and wide. Share it. Please share it on your social media or things to bring attention to the site. Any sharing actually helps bring attention to the website. So share a link with your friends through email or through your social media in that sense. The other thing is, if you've not subscribed, please consider subscribing. If you've enjoyed what we do here and want to follow it, subscriptions, building the subscription base is actually a way that we can grow. The channel grows a little bit. We always lose people over time, but we need to grow the channel some more. It helps us get certain privileges and rights, like monetization and things like that can help the channel. I'd like to have the tip jar. That'd be cool. Tip jar. Hey, please, monetization, but not necessarily ads. I don't think there's be ads want to be coming here, and I wouldn't want ads anyways. I was like, hey, give me a tip jar, please. Another thing you can do is encourage others to come to the channel and look it up. Now, if you had something you didn't like what I did here, have some problems with it, you can always thumbs down, but say why in the comments, so therefore we can learn from it. In other words, we can benefit from it. Someone can benefit of the rationale, reason for your objection. Another thing you can do is you want to follow me on social media. The links are below. If you want to know more about me as a scholar and as a researcher, you can look at my academic social media links below, the social media links. And if you want to help me to do what I do here financially a little bit, because it helps inflation and things like this, it'd be nice to have some little extra money to buy things. It would be useful that you can do so through membership, through subscribe to our Patreon links, URLs listed below. Or you can, another way you can assist me is to buy one of my books that are available. The three books that are currently available, they're listed below. And what you can do there is you can order it through your local bookstore, or if not your local bookstore, then through an online distributor like Amazon or something like this. Or you can order through the publisher. Now, if those of you who are studying Aristotle's Politics and would like to have a kind of study guide to this, I would recommend my notebook for Aristotle's Politics. And buying it through Lulu, the publisher, is better for me because I will make the profit. I will make the profit that the online booksellers would make otherwise. And it goes directly to me, whereas even the other two publishers are not as, I won't see the money for months and months and months. Whereas if I order Lulu, I'll get anytime someone buys the book, I'll get some money. If it buys through online, okay. When the online sellers sell it, I'll get a little money. I'll get more money if you buy it through Lulu. So therefore, those are the things I'd ask you to check. So therefore, I hope everything's okay. We'll look at next time chapter 8 of this, and I hope you guys have a good day. Take care. Bye bye.